So today I'm going to be talking through the tactic I've been using in divisions that all revolves around having these two centre forwards man marked by your opponent's centre backs, which allows your Romario or any second striker you use here to get in free down the middle. Additionally, this formation works very well against the traditional meta formations because most of those formations don't have coverage defensively in this wide centre mid area of the pitch. So these two centre mids, a box to box and an orchestrator, work very well, although you can use creative playmakers or any inactive playstyle like Iniesta to good effect too. So this formation was suggested to be on stream, but it's actually inspired from the formation that Tess uses, who's a repeated top 10 player, as you can see from the badges here. If we take a look at his formation, this is what he's running, but I've made some adjustments to make it a bit easier to use, so you don't have to be as good as Tess to still find it effective. So notably, the two main differences are he has a centre back on his left back position and a defensive full back on his right back. I make the change to that, and also he has his left centre mid as an attacking midfielder, whole player, and then his right centre mid as another whole player. So that's going to be very attacking. And also his second striker is a Lionel Messi as an active playstyle, that's SS. But I like having inactive playstyle there. So like I said, the reason I made these adjustments is so I have a bit more security when I'm building up. You can see Pirlo's here for the pass, but similar to a whole player, he actually makes the run in behind, even though I didn't do an L1 pass. And that's the beauty of the orchestrator playstyle. As soon as Vieira goes out to press the right back, Pirlo notices that spot and goes in to fill it, and then we can keep attacking from there. And you can see from this next clip here, when your opponent is playing long ball counter, when Iniesta picks up the ball, he's in acres of space, plenty of time to think about it. And if you look at the bottom right, my opponent isn't on defensive mentality. So if you're playing against long ball counter, particularly against a Vieira in DMF like my opponent has here, you will have acres of space with those wide centre mids. So here's an example from where I'm not hitting my opponent on a counter attack. When I receive the ball with Pirlo, I do a skill move to bait the press and then hit him with a cut behind and turn to bypass him. Carry the ball forward. Now I know my defensive midfielder is completely free. Play it into Romario, who plays it to overlap in Mateus, and then we hit the first time shot bottom right corner. And that's because, one, I had my box to box overlapping like this, and then my two centre forwards were marked by the centre backs, leaving Romario free on the edge of the box to score. Now your box to box doesn't have to have good finishing stats. I'm using Mateus, and on my Mateus build I only have 74 finishing, although it is compensated by 99 kicking power. But that is something that I always talk about in my training guides. If you have high kicking power, it can counteract lower finishing. And the overlap doesn't just come out wide. You can see sometimes the box to box will overlap in the middle. Unfortunately though, we didn't get the finish this time around. But again, it's not only the box to box that overlaps. You can see here in this clip, Pirlo overlaps, which is why I would recommend, if you're going to use an orchestrator on the other side or your non-box to box centre midfielder, make sure they're good on the ball, and there's someone like a Pirlo or a Pedri who's good at dribbling with the ball roll and has good finishing stats to help as well. So the key to this tactic is that your centre forwards are going to be marked. You can see when Messi comes short, Beckenbauer follows, and it allowed Romario to run in behind. We did miss that chance, that's why I cut the clip short there. This time we hit it out to Cantona. Look, Van Boyten steps up, then we play it around, eventually find Cantona, and then Romario again. This is inactive playstyle, by the way. He doesn't have any playstyle, but because his defensive awareness is so high, he just knows how to get free. Again, we play it over to Romario, do a 1-2, and then we're in behind, and we play it back for the first time shot on Cantona. So I would recommend all players in your front three have first time shot, because whichever of the three end up in the middle, it will change. It doesn't matter who you're playing SS, all three of them will end up in the middle or left or right. They all interchange very well. They kind of do need first time shot to bury that chance. And this clip here is a great demonstration of the interplay between the deep line forward and the second striker. You can see even when we're deep on the pitch, the deep line forward came short and Romario went in behind, and then when we go further up on the pitch, Romario plays out the Cantona. I'm waiting for the overlap, played a little pass, and then Romario can put it into the back of the net. And here's to show that it isn't just Romario. I was using a variety of players. Here's Blitz Curler Salah with Roman flank, and I was also using the 2009 Messi with Roman flank, so they will get free. It's the inactive playstyle that's getting them free, not the individual player itself that you're actually using. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what individual instructions are on the tactic. Well, it depends. So when this tactic was suggested to me, it was recommended I use a destroyer in DMF, which is something I usually don't like, but I actually like in this tactic. But importantly, you don't use any destroyers in centre back, so you can either use build-ups or defensive fullbacks. If you look at what Tess is using, he's using two defensive fullbacks in centre back. For the individual instructions, you just put deep line on that DMF destroyer to help him join the back line. Now, the other day I did pack Tony Adams, so I threw him into the formation just to see what it was like, see if there was any issues, and I did notice issues pretty quickly. But the way to resolve that is very simply just put an Anchorman in DMF instead of a destroyer. One thing I always recommend is Anchorman in DMF, and it's probably because I always use a centre-back pairing with one of them being a destroyer. So one thing I think I've noticed from experimenting this tactic is if you're going to use a destroyer in centre-back, you should ideally have an Anchorman in front of them. Now, the other individual instructions, I recommend using a defensive fullback and an offensive fullback to give you width. Now you can put defensive on your offensive fullback to emulate more what Tess is doing. Tess is having the defensive fullback Walker at right back, and then he's putting Thuram as a centre back. But really, I don't like doing this because I like to use my fullbacks in this game. I know it's the most meta thing to have defensive fullbacks and then one of your fullbacks as a centre back, but I like to play the game to attack and score goals, so I like my fullback going forward, and they're definitely well able to if you have the right type of card. So you can see in these clips here, there's a few times where even if the first one is more, if he had defensive instruction, he wouldn't have been able to get forward. This time you don't need the instruction, but it is to show that an offensive fullback who has good abilities on the ball can add a lot to the tactic. But when I load into a match and I'm against a high rated opponent, or I am particularly worried about my opponent's wingers, I will also put the defense instruction on Philip Lamb, but I will keep him as a left back because it gives you more options when you're building out from the back. He will be a bit wider and shown for the ball better than a centre back would. So that's the tactic. You can use the deep line forward as second striker, but I do feel it is best as centre forward. So let me know if you guys are using this tactic and if you have success with it like I'm having in the comments below.